Yo yo yo, welcome back to Mono Plays. Today we are going to be rambling about gamers. Gamers. Rise up, rise up. Welcome back. I just wanted to go on another yapping session, kind of building off of the previous video where I was talking about Call of Duty and basically the disconnect between the fans of Warzone and the fans of a more traditional Call of Duty experience, and how that has basically influenced the interactions between the fan base, creating a split, a divide, whatever you would like to call it. And today we will be trying to go into that with a little bit more detail. Now, it's still going to be unstructured because I am sort of rambling. Whatever point comes to mind, I will just try and expand upon that point. And if the well runs dry, I'll probably move on to the next point, or I'll just tangentially trail off into something else. It's just going to be what it is. But we're going to just try and talk about something that I've noticed amongst a lot of gamers, which I don't want to call entitlement, but I don't actually have a alternative word to describe this as. So while entitlement I don't think is exactly the correct word, it will be good enough as the placeholder, right? So what do I mean by the entitlement amongst gamers? You see, there's this thing that sometimes happens within video games, and I mean it happens in other things as well, but with the focus here being in terms of the video game space, there is a demand that some people feel that they are allowed to make of a video game, and I cannot see that as anything else other than a certain level of entitlement. Now, mind you, you can ask for certain things in video games. You can't even demand certain things in video game, especially when it comes to the quality of the game and anything else that you might have been promised that you otherwise did not receive. But there's a lot of people who seem to think that by virtue of purchasing the game, there is certain things that you now need the game to cater to you for, right? It's not the best example, but there is an example of certain games that have, let's just say, customizable characters that you create before hopping into the game, right? There are some people who will sit online, whether that be on Twitter or an equivalent media platform, or even on YouTube, making videos and live streams on Twitch or anything else like that, where they will make demands that the game includes certain creative options that isn't necessarily going to improve the experience of the gamer. Right? Now, this could come from something as simple as, well, I want better hairstyles in the game, right? And they would make a demand of that instead of trying to make it sound as though it's a suggestion, right? Some people might argue that they want their own culture to be more represented in the character they're designing in that video game, right? Even though the video game itself might have very limited creative customizable features. You might only have a bunch of presets that you can select from, hair 1, hair 2, hair 3, right? Nose 1, nose 2, instead of like having like the full ability to completely warp and change the character's face, that you could basically design anything in any one. Same thing with the skin color. There might not actually be a slider for skin color. It might just be, here are the 4 primary colors, here is the saturation level. It might do that. And some people might even make the demand that, man, look, I am a, let's just say, a Sicilian dude. I am half Asian. I want to have a half Asian Sicilian character in X game. And they would make that as though it is a demand. They wouldn't say it as nicely as I just phrased it, which is interesting to note, right? That's what I mean when it's like this kind of entitlement that, did you purchase the game knowing that you wouldn't be able to make that character? And would you now demand that the game allow you to make that character even though that was never an objective of the game itself? Things like that. There's also a demand that some gamers make on an opposite side of that spectrum, where they will say that a character in the game is not as conventionally attractive as they would want, and therefore the game itself is a subpar product and is therefore bad. Which is a very big jump in logic from not as attractive character, therefore subpar, therefore bad. Like the quality goes down because the quality went down. That's a strange review, right? It's a 4 out of 10, which means it's actually a 1 out of 10. It's like, whoa, that's crazy. But you will see people do that. They have this kind of entitlement. And it's the same thing you will find across hardcore gamers and casual gamers. So when I say a hardcore gamer, what I more so mean is it's someone who has invested a certain amount of time in the game. I don't like saying pro because pro implies that you have a certain skill level and you do certain things. It just has connotations that I don't necessarily want to deal with. So I normally say hardcore gamer because hardcore gamer feels to me that if you mention hardcore, it can denote a level of skill, but I feel it more so denotes amount of time you've put into the game, right? And there are many people who can put even 5 years into a game and still be bad at it, even be mediocre at it if they're like improved over time. But most people, when I'm saying hardcore, I try to more so mean someone who's probably been a fan of the game for a very long time. They've probably played the game for a very long time. They probably know a little bit of the nitty-gritty details within the game itself. Now, when we get to casuals, I try and make a distinction myself between newbies and casuals, because some people describe a casual as being someone who's new to the game and doesn't play the game very often, which that you might be a decade-long casual in a game, right? You might play the game casually, but have been playing the game for 10 years. It could be a thing. So obviously, I want to just make that distinction. Sometimes people would go, listening to what I've just explained, they would go, yeah, of course, a hardcore gamer isn't going to necessarily be good at the game. And of course, a casual gamer isn't necessarily going to be bad or new to the game. I get that, but I need to make my definitions clear as I explain this, right? So when I say hardcore, you know what I mean, right? Even if you agree, right? And when I say casual, you know exactly what I mean. I don't want there to be a misunderstanding because you have misinterpreted what I have said, or even that you point out some error in what I say because you hold me accountable to, well, Mono, you said a casual is X, Y, and Z, but when you mention it at timestamp 14 or whatever, you said something completely opposite, right? And implied something completely opposite to what you said earlier. I want that to be clear so that everyone knows when I'm being consistent and inconsistent. Okay, moving on. The entitlement amongst gamers, especially between the casual player and the hardcore player, often manifests, as far as I can tell, in when they make demands for nerfs and buffs or for, certain customizable features in the game itself. It's going to be a bit of a difficult topic to help visualize for someone who isn't very invested in the scene. So let's use hardcore gamers as the example here, right? What can sometimes happen amongst a hardcore gamer, and this is like sort of the demands and entitlement and stuff like that, is that sometimes you will find someone who's fighting in a game like Tekken, right? And they go up against a character that, let's just say, is a grappling type character, so King or something to that effect, right? And we just say our hardcore gamer still has a hard time dealing with Kings and the grapples, taking the grabs. Now, this is a very stupid example because most people, they start to learn these things very early on because you don't want to get caught in a chain of grabs. But moving forward from this, let's just accept this strange hypothetical, right? We have a hardcore gamer, they can't deal with grappling characters, they face off against a grappling character. You might find that this person, in their own frustrations, they might start announcing that this character should either be nerfed or be removed from the game or anything else like that. And you will notice this example that I'm trying to give extend to a lot of hardcore players. As soon as they get mildly inconvenienced, it doesn't need to be something that is particularly powerful. It just needs to be something that they view as inconvenient, frustrating, or even something that they might view as, this doesn't require skill. Even I can do this, but I choose not to. Those people who use that kind of logic. You will see that these people are the ones who oftentimes make these crazy demands of the game that this should be nerfed, this should be removed, and all kinds of things like that. But then backpedal when a noob, right? Newbie player, long for. Yeah, noob is short for newbie, if anyone doesn't know that, right? But so like a newbie player or a casual, for example, you will find that if they make certain demands of a game, right? Oh, this should be nerfed, this should be buffed. That hardcore player will suddenly appear out of the ether and say, you can't just make demands like that, because that affects us who play on a higher scale. Us high tier players also get affected by these buffs and nerfs. How could you just make demands like that as a casual or newbie player? Like, how could you do that? But then they are the ones who also want to complain, yap and moan about being mildly inconvenienced in a bad matchup. It's actually like insane that these people are this entitled sometimes. But then on the opposite side of the spectrum, you get the exact same thing from a newbie player. They know nothing about the game, let's say for example, and they go into a match and they deal with someone who is way better than them at a particular character. They will get upset and mad for losing that match as abysmally as they would lose. They would get juggled the entire match. They would be standing in the corner the entire match, just being wall bounced to eternity. And then they would be like, man, this character is way too powerful. This character is overpowered, garbage, nonsense. And they would complain and moan about that. Then they will hop on that same character, right? And here's where the crazy part starts to kick in. They seem to think that they will be able to achieve the exact same result. And then they don't. And start complaining once more, acting as if the skill level that they have should have been automatically accounted for by the game by virtue of them picking a character that they thought, air quotes, was good. Right? Or by playing this character, they think that that alone should allow them to win a match. So you now get features in video games where it's like the game plays itself for the player, right? Some people talk about this like as journalist difficulty in certain video games, right? But I'm talking like from the context of tech, and you get like this oversimplified controls and such, right? These things that just basically means that you press one button and you just start doing like super complex combos that do a decent amount of damage, and you have like block assists and things like that, and you get these people who don't know how to play the game convince themselves that I'm just so good at the game, bro, because the game played itself, right? So you have now video game companies catered to these people who, when they were beat by a character and they were completely outraged by the notion that, wait, as soon as I jump onto base Jin, I don't seem to be able to completely beat everybody. Why is that? And then the game decides, oh, well, here's a solution to your problem, buddy. You don't need to practice the game. You don't need to understand different sorts of matchups and stuff like that. You don't need to even understand the distance, like spacing of your character's attacks, the frequency that they can attack, the end. Like, you don't need to learn any of that. Here's just a solution on a silver platter. Press this button and you should be able to perform a super complex combo. That's so lame, bro. That's like super lame. Now, again, if we're gonna go back to the hardcore gamers, I would agree with them when they do complain about things like that, but it doesn't mean that these people aren't themselves once again entitled. They seem to believe that the demands that they make should be more valid than others because they've been in the game longer than another person, right? So if they've been playing the game for 5 years, someone who's been playing the game for even like a year and a half, the year and a half guy, he shouldn't be taken into account. Me, I've played the game for 5 years. I know what I'm talking about. And that is almost not the case oftentimes, right? Like, there are some people who have a decent reputation, right? But those people themselves, because their reputation grows, they also get this inflated ego thinking that, well, what I have to say because I've got a platform or I've got a larger voice or reputation than others, what I say can't be wrong. And what will end up happening is that they or their fans will start going after certain people who even dare to go against what they have to say. So what I'm saying is that these people who have this influence, who've been playing the game for a very long time, they don't always have a very good grasp of what's going on the ground level. Now, this is just me generalizing. Of course, there will be noobs and casuals who are going to be excellent at the game and is going to have perfect analysis of what the problems of the games are, because just because you're a noob in Mortal Kombat does not mean that what you have to say about fighting games of a similar style is incorrect. You've probably played other fighting games in a similar style, right? And likewise, just because you are an arrogant hardcore gamer with big influence and a big audience and all kinds of stuff like that does not mean that you've been infected with the ego of someone who has an audience that is large. It does not necessarily mean that you are going to say things that are going to be blatantly wrong and send your fans after people. I'm generalizing here, right? But that's sort of the point of the video here. This is the general topic of the entitlement of gamers, right? So moving on, we kind of then get to this thing that happens very often in most geek, nerd-based fandoms, which is purity testing. Something I find particularly frustrating, right? As a person who's very interested in superheroes, very interested in the fantasy and science fiction genre, it comes up very often that someone would be like, how many of X book did you read? And you might say an amount, you might not say an amount, and you will probably get a similar result regardless. Oh, I've read 4 of those books. Oh, you didn't read all 16? Fake fan? And it's like, dang, really? And then that kind of becomes a thing that you get plastered with for like as long as you interact with that person in that online setting. So what could end up happening, for example, is you talk about, oh, this character, I actually prefer them when they're like this. And the same person pops up out of the woodwork and goes, wow, I mean, you've only read about 4 books of this person. You don't even understand the character. I bet your interpretation of the character is even wrong. You probably lack media literacy. The dreaded word, media literacy. So, you know, things like that happen, right? When people start doing purity tests, they start to go, oh, what sort of experience do you have with X game? How much time did you put into X game? When did you jump onto the franchise of X game, etc., etc., right? So if you're using Warzone as an example, right, people who started playing Call of Duty for Warzone often get ostracized by Call of Duty fans because it's like, you're just a Warzone player. You weren't actually here from the jump. You weren't there in the Call of Duty lobbies where people were banging your mom and stuff like that. You know, people like they have that as a medal of honor, and to some extent, you know, you deserve to take credit for surviving those lobbies and the chat rooms and stuff like that. You deserve your props for those, right? But the point is that you will get a lot of purity testing. How many achievements did you manage to unlock in X game, right? For those achievement hunter people, right? And another thing where some people would even lie about their experience in the game. They would say, oh man, I managed to beat every single boss in Dark Souls 3 completely hitless. And it's like, okay, bro. Sure. And you then find out that, nah, they didn't. Right? So some people will lie about their accomplishments in video games. Some people will downplay the achievements of other people in video games. Oh, so what? You did X, Y, and Z. You didn't do it while under condition A, B, and C. Right? So there's a lot of this purity testing thing where people really just try and almost downplay another person's experience within the fandom that they're joining in, especially in video games, right? You will get a lot of people who will even criticize the way you decide to play a video game. Are you playing Call of Duty with only pistols? Bro, there are better weapons. And it's like, yeah, I'm aware of that, man, but like, I just want to play with pistols. I'm trying to get that John Wick vibe. Oh, but John Wick also uses other weapons. Yeah, I get that, bro. I know. But I want to just get the John Wick with the pistol vibe. Let's move on. Yeah, but you could play the game and then this person is just on your case once again, trying to alter how you choose to play the game. And this becomes like a thing where it's this entitlement once again. They feel like they have the responsibility in some instances to make you enjoy the game the same way they enjoy the game. And they feel as though the way they play the game is the correct way to play the game. Which leads me into this thing of a bias towards your own experience. I know that sounds weird. I don't know how to phrase that, but if I explain, I hope it makes more sense. Some people have this thing, especially in competitive fighting games, shooter games, you know, games where you particularly compete against another person and there is going to be weapons, armor, you know, rules of engagement and such. People tend to have a character that they might like, a weapon that they might like, a map that they might like, etc., etc. Something that they really prefer in that game. And what they will do is, so long as that thing they prefer affords them an advantage at the game, they will be completely fine with it. However, if the same condition is met for somebody else, for example, you hop into a Call of Duty map, right? And it's a map you just absolutely hate. And other people have a great time on this map, you might start to claim that the map is bad simply because those other people have a better time on this map, right? And, you know, this is almost fair in a certain sense. Why I say almost fair is because I also fall into this, right? There are certain weapons in Call of Duty that I just hate going up against. And there are certain weapons that I'm just completely fine with. So, for example, I don't mind a dude back in first Warzone, I didn't ever really mind a guy wearing like the the riot shield and having like a shotgun with like dragon's breath and like extended mag and like an increased rate of fire. I never really minded those dudes rushing me down and then trying to just like blitz me with the shotgun, as opposed to guys standing at the top of buildings with sniper rifles just waiting to pick me off. One always irritated me more than the other, even though one I could argue is also toxic, right? Just like running at me with your shield crouched, just trying to get closer to me so you can just bash me with the shield, take out your shotgun, and then just blast me down. Like, I didn't like that, but I would have preferred that because I have a better chance of actually trying to kill you, aiming at your feet and stuff like that, or maybe waiting for my teammate to flank you, versus both me and my teammate getting sniped by you and your buddy. Right? So there's instances where I'm also like, bro, this is a bad experience and I hated playing the game for that day. But there are some people who are incapable of making that separation. They will say that the game mode is bad. They will say that the game sometimes is bad. Oh man, the game is bad because Clive is in it. Tekken fans, guys, you need to relax. However, I do understand your plight. Clive does not feel like a Tekken character. This is a full-blown, super like anime character. This guy should have been in a Bleach game instead of in the Tekken game, right? He would have fit in Bleach more, is probably what I'm trying to say. But the point is, you cannot now go out and try and claim that the game itself is bad simply because Clive is in it and because Clive has certain abilities that feel like they don't belong in the game. It's not a bad game, it's a bad character, right? It's a poorly integrated character. But there's a bias towards your own experience. As long as the game caters to me, it's good. As soon as it doesn't, it's bad. That's unfair. You need to try and make the separation. But I think partly that comes from the whole aura online of hyperbole. There's a lot of people online who always want to be hyperbolic, whether or not it's in the positive or in the negative. And once again, I'm not immune to any of this. I'm not throwing out these claims and criticisms and statements thinking that, oh man, not me though. I'm not trying to do that. What I'm more so trying to present here is the trend that I do observe. And online, there is a trend of hyperbole, right? For example, I play the character of Mono, especially when I'm on the Cannonball podcast. Hey, plug, go watch the Cannonball podcast. We make videos there, we talk about pop culture, and sometimes we just yap about nothing at all. But that aside, on the Cannonball podcast, my duty, my role as Mono is to sometimes try and be as inflammatory as possible. Not necessarily try to be mean. I'm already a mean person at heart, of course, but not to necessarily try and be mean. But like, if somebody else were to say, for example, man, this was a pretty good movie, right? I definitely give it a 6 or 7 out of 10. My job oftentimes is to go, actually, it's a 5 out of 10. Matter of fact, it's trash. 3 out of 10. That is sometimes my job, right? Sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't. It's not easy to play the character, especially because I don't know how the character will evolve as time goes on and whether or not I should be more inflammatory, less inflammatory, or if I should even play it off as a joke, right? That I would say, nah, movie could have been better. Definitely a 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10 maybe. So that would in this instance be me repeating what the other guy said, but just trying to make it sound like it's a bad review. Instead of saying it was a decent movie, 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10, I go, not that good, 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10. You know, I could try and do that. I might even do that in the next video. Hey, look out for the next video. I'm not sure what it is, but I'm gonna try and do that in the next video. But yeah, the point being is that there is definitely a trend of hyperbole. There's a lot of people who's making claims of toxic positivity. There's another word for it that I heard very recently. Someone used it. It came up in a video. It was, man, I can't remember it at the moment, but there was something similar as a claim of the positivity. But there's also the toxic negativity, of course. Even the word toxic itself gets thrown around so often, bro. Like, any amount of buzzwords getting thrown around is also really silly. There's also the whole issue with, like, air quotes, culture war, with certain people believing one side of a spectrum and that their ideological opposition should be bad and vice versa. It's really just a war zone sometimes, man, and it sucks. War zone. But moving on, right? As a matter of fact, let's jump into the topic of this ideological opposition. This is something that comes up amongst gamers as well. Ugly character equals bad, you know, or ugly character equals good, or character who meets X condition appearing in game, playing big role or small role in game, means that this game needs to either be denounced or it needs to be supported. So you might know about this if you've been on Twitter for any amount of time in these communities. There will be sometimes people who will just kind of go completely bonkers, like frothing at the mouth, just trying to praise something for like the most nonsense, like inclusions, or trying to completely dismantle and destroy it for the most nonsense inclusions, right? Now, a lot of people have been upset, for example, about Yasuke in Assassin's Creed Shadows. Whether or not the character existed, I'm not actually very interested in that topic, in that conversation. I'm also interested personally in the topic of why are we playing a samurai? Why is Assassin's Creed constantly moving away from the idea of assassinating people, doing things stealthily, and moving more and more into the realm of being an action game, right? It feels to me like the people at Ubisoft, not sure how you pronounce it. I'll say Ubisoft because I've been saying that my whole life. But like the people at Ubisoft, I feel as though there is a conflict in what they want to make here. I remember playing Assassin's Creed games where combat was definitely an option, but it wasn't ideal, right? Like assassinating someone would have just been way better for you every single time, really. And you could engage in combat, but again, that wasn't your priority. It was like the last resort. But nowadays, when I'm playing Assassin's Creed games, I feel like that is the incentive. Particularly, I point to one of the Assassin's Creed games that I like, but I hate that I like it, right? Is Odyssey. I feel as though I never want to assassinate anyone ever because it just doesn't feel like it's worth my time. Because almost every assassination I do will inevitably fail because I don't know if it's going to crit or not. And if it doesn't crit, it means that the enemy isn't going to die. If it does crit, congratulations, he gets insta-killed. It's not fun. It's like, I might as well just get into a fight with bro, man. I might as well just like climb on a hill or a mountain, just like take out my flaming arrows, my poison arrows, my explosive arrows, do my power shot, and then hopefully he's dead. At least this way, like I'm not trying to assassinate him and then feel like I failed at the assassination. So now I need to engage in something I didn't want to, right? So Ubisoft have been doing this thing of moving away from assassination style stuff and putting the priority into the combat and the action RPG version of things. And I don't like that. And I feel like Yasuke's inclusion in Assassin's Creed Shadows is the epitome of that, right? It's the final form, the last evolution of that notion, where it's now like, oh, we can't just have an assassin in our Assassin's Creed game. We need to also have this other warrior to fulfill the action RPG aspect of the thing. And it's like, man, bro, like, can we just have an assassin be the main focus of the Assassin's game, right? Like just an assassin, full stop. If you wanted to make Yasuke in this version of the story a assassin, like samurai assassin in training, something like on a Ghost of Tsushima kind of thing, you could have done that as well. You could have. You might have still met the same resistance, but that's partly because of the whole knee-jerk reaction to race-swapping characters, the inclusion of black characters, the inclusion of any other, let's say, for lack of a better term, SJW style inclusion into these games, you know, the dreaded DEI word, right? Those things could have still caused you to have some resistance to the game. But what I'm also trying to point to is that I think that people are hyper fixating on that aspect instead of, man, like, is there a problem going on at Ubisoft, man? Are they okay? Do they want to still make Assassin's Creed games? Maybe this is the developers crying for help by making the assassination experiences in these games less and less fun because they want to make a different game. Maybe we should try and ask ourselves some of those questions, right? And in these things, you will then once again find people just frothing at the mouth. They say, wow, this game includes someone of the LGBTQ. I'm obligated morally to support this game. And it's like, wow, I don't know if that's a healthy way to engage in the consumer practice, because you're not looking at the quality of the product you're being given. And that sends out a signal to other people, the ne'er-do-wells of the business industry, that wait, As long as I add in elements that you like, you will pay for the product regardless of the quality of the product. Hold on a second. I need to do this more often. And that's where the notion of like tokenization comes from, right? So long as I add a black character, LGBTQ character, a character of any cultural background that might be applicable here, insert minority group, these companies will just add them, do the bare minimum for the marketing and the idea behind it, and they will get ideologues who match the beliefs of what they're trying to portray to be the spokesperson for this, and then they will just swim in cash. Everybody else who's actually invested and interested in these things then get left to the wayside. Likewise, you will find the opposite take effect, where we get all these losers online who are like, oh, I made a mod for this game where all the characters are hyper attractive, all the black characters are removed, all the other elements that, you know, might have been considered, air quotes, progressive, all those elements have been removed from the game, right? And then they get like a bunch of pats on the back from their weirdo friends about that, right? And it's like, you get now a market almost for this, exclusively removing these elements from games and media. And it's like, it's weird. Like, why are you guys doing any of this, bro? Calm down. But let's move on. Moving on to the hardcore gamers versus the noobs in a lot of instances, right? There is a divide, especially in terms of like people talking about these things on social media. I remember having someone hate on me for playing Jeff the Landshark in Marvel Rivals. And I really couldn't figure out what he was so upset about until I realized that, oh, at one point they were trying to capture the zone, right? And I, Jeff the Landshark, swam up. I swam up towards the whole squad. Mind you, the entire squad was standing on the point. And I triggered my ultimate. I swallowed all of them, and I spat them out off of the ledge, right? Most of them, I believe, didn't have any movement options that could get them off the ledge. So I spat them off the ledge and they all died. It was a team wipe. And so I went back to the point and I stood there just vibing, enjoying myself, you know, doing the backwards swim of Jeff, just in circles, swimming backwards and stuff. I was having a good time and they didn't like that. This dude just wasn't happy with that. And I was so confused because it was like, he's trying to accuse me of being like a toxic Jeff the Landshark, right? But it's like, what was I supposed to do? Was I supposed to let them capture the zone? If it was an Iron Man hitting them with the maximum pulse and they all died, would he be considered a toxic Iron Man? Or is it just because I'm playing a character that's considered by other people to be toxic? Or is it because it's a support character? Support character shouldn't be able to team wipe or anything else like that. I just can't figure out what was bro so upset about. But then I go online because now I'm like, okay, maybe Jeff the Landshark is like a powerful character instead of just being sometimes toxic, right? Maybe he is just a really overpowered character. And I see a bunch of people say, no, Jeff the Landshark isn't even the best support character in the game. And I mean, I feel like that might be a fair assessment. I don't know. That's my bias. You guys can tell me. But I've had way more success in team wiping with other characters. And it's because the kit that they have can do damage and can heal, right? So someone like an Invisible Woman, shit up a bunch of like force fields, shoot out the little vortex bubble thing of hers, and then whenever someone wants to leave the vortex, just push them into it or pull them out of it, and then continue to hit them with your little orbs, your psionic orbs thing, right? And if any of your teammates are close by, they get heals and your opponent gets damaged. Like, it's way easier to do stuff like that with her than I feel I do have with Jeff the Landshark. Anytime I really kill people with Jeff the Landshark is when I have my ultimate, and I don't even have lots of success with that. Sometimes the enemy team sees me and they just get so mad, they just kill me after I've triggered my ultimate, right? I'm trying to like kill their teammates and then I just get completely blitzed by like an Iron Fist and a T'Challa, right? Like a Black Panther and Iron Fist just beam me down. So it happens, but the point I'm also trying to get to all in all is that there sometimes seems to be some sort of a divide on social media about the good and bad of the game and then what actually happens in game. Because again, if somebody got hit with a maximum pulse, I wonder what they would say. If someone got hit by the Psylocke ultimate, I wonder if they would say something similar. If someone got hit by like Doctor Strange's crowd control and then had the entire team blitzed because they all were in that CC, like, what would happen then? Would the complaint still be the same? Or is it just because Jeff the Landshark has a reputation for being slippery and annoying to deal with? Is is the character considered now to be toxic because they are annoying to deal with, or what, right? When they're then considered to not be, once again, this is more so based off of what I saw online, they're not even considered to be the best support character in the game, right? I mean, for me personally, I feel like right now, the best support character in the game, and I could be completely wrong, might be Loki, because as long as he has his ult ready and he has a bunch of clone sets down the hill, triggers the ultimate attack, and then turns back into himself and then just goes back to healing. I feel like I hate Loki so much. And you want to kill him, he transfers to a clone or just goes invisible and runs away, the bloody coward. But I feel like Loki is way worse, in my personal opinion. Loki can also become Jeff the Landshark, so he has the potential and capacity to be the most toxic character if Jeff is considered to be the most toxic, right? But that aside, there also comes this thing of an inability to improve at the game. This is now more so for casuals and stuff. They seem to not want to put in the time and effort, which I think really assists microtransactions in these video games. These people who want their levels to be boosted, they want the cosmetic items so that they don't look like a noob. And what brings this up, I guess, is that a lot of people will like leave in voice chat like something like in Marvel Rivals of, you really paid for that skin, right? And it's like they paid for a skin for a character they just can't play. And you ask yourself, like, maybe you should get good with the character. Oh, he said get good. Maybe you should get good with the character first, then buy the cosmetics for that character. It just feels to me like it's more so you're trying to hide the fact that you are new to the game. When you buy a cosmetic for a character you're just not experienced with. Outside of probably some people, right, being like, hey, I just like the character, I like the skin, so I'm going to wear the skin and play the character. I don't care if I'm bad at them. And I respect that. Fair enough. But at the same time, I wonder, does some of this come from you don't want to look like you are inexperienced with the character, and microtransaction that boost your levels and boost your whatever else performance in some games also feel as though it's just there to expedite that process of noob to professional at the video game. So you get people who get then greatly boosted accounts who just think that they're like the best around. I'm not referencing anyone in particular, guys. Please don't make any claims here. But yeah, the people get boosted accounts and they think that they're just the best around, right? And then it's like they're trash at the game. They don't understand the fundamentals of this game. And unfortunately, when they get put in their place, they want to blame everybody else except for the ability to actually engage with the game itself. Likewise, when you go back to the pros and the hardcores at these games, right, they also don't seem to like that. What I should probably say is maybe there's an issue that sometimes gamers have with the dopamine hits and the short-term gains, I suppose, right? They want a lot of progress in as little time as possible. So some people will sometimes have something like a bread and butter combo in a video game, and as soon as that bread and butter combo doesn't work, they don't know what else to do, they get completely beat, and then they want to get mad about it. This is more so for the hardcore gamers, right? Or once again, they meet a matchup that isn't very good for the character that they're playing, for the weapons that they're using, or anything else to that effect. And you will then tend to see that these people, they just kind of search for something that's going to give them that instant gratification. So they try and also just partake in like really toxic things. Or, if I'm going to something like Marvel Rivals, you get someone who's like playing Punisher and dude is just running out into a battlefield and there's like 5 dudes posted up ready to just murk him, and you will see this Punisher spam the I need healing, and I will go in because I'm normally a healer, right? And I would start doing my damnedest to heal this Punisher, and bro seems to think that because he's being healed he should engage more, and then he dies. Then he gets mad at me. I didn't do enough healing. I'm like, bro, look, try playing a character that isn't just going to be like ooga booga. Maybe you should try and play a character that requires some level of thought and some level of at least engagement with your teammates. If you can't even manage that, like, what are you doing here? And I think that comes from that desire for that instant gratification. I want to feel like I'm the champion of the team. So I'm going to go out there and I'm going to try and kill everybody and I'm not going to succeed. And when I don't succeed, I'm going to get mad at everybody else. Now, these are mostly just people who are going to be really entitled. Not every Punisher player does this, and not every person who thinks that they're the main character is bad at being the main character. But there is an inability or a desire to not actually improve at the game, and that's more so what I'm trying to just bring up, right? So we now then get to the final of the final, right? In conclusion, I think that there is a bit of a problem with a lot of video game players, a lot of video game nerds, and whether or not you are been in the video game space for a long time or for a very short time, there is a bit of a problem when it comes to people trying to actually communicate their issues with the game, the praises with the game, and just in general being able to foster a community where you are helpful to people. For example, I have yet to find somebody who can actually explain to me how to play well into a team comp, right? By that, what I mean is that if you have like an Iron Fist on your team, do I play Lunar Snow even if I'm the worst Lunar Snow player ever? Or do I play a different healer knowing that we won't get the team boost effect, but I at least know I'll be able to decently heal my Iron Fist and keep up with them or anything else like that? What sort of formations are available in the game, for example, right? Like, is there any sort of way that I need to stand in a particular, like, advancing, like, let's just say I have to escort the little vehicle thing, right? If I'm playing Sue Storm, do I need to stand in the back, or do I need to like try and stand closer to my teammates? If I'm a Venom, do I engage, disengage, or do I try and stick with the team and like enter some sort of defensive formation? If I am a Spider-Man, do I just go out knowing that I could very well die, but try and blitz the back line as much as I possibly can? Like, I haven't found most people trying to really explain these things, except for people saying, stay in formation, guys. And I'm like, bro, is he like copying movie quotes or something like that? What does he mean, formation? What formation? Like, what is the formation? Supports at the back, supports in the middle? What's the formation? Like when you look at other sports, like in real life, when people normally say stay in formation, it's because they have a set amount of formations that they've trained to position themselves in, and then alter that formation provided that the circumstances change enough to make that new formation a more viable option. But I don't normally see things like that in video games, where people actually are at least video game communities online. I don't normally see a lot of people trying to like just make it common knowledge and common practice that generally you want to do this with this and this and this. Normally I have to go out of my way to find that, like look up online how to be a better Iron Fist player. Like, I need to do that. I need to search online. Sorry, I keep referencing Marvel Rivals and Tekken because those are the games on my brain right now, because those are the ones that I've been engaging with online more often than some of the other ones that I wanted to reference, like Warzone and Call of Duty. My apologies. But yeah, so there is a difficulty in finding people who want to actually be conducive to video games, right? I met this one guy who made a demand of me, right? Then he asked me to play Sue Storm, who I'm not the best with. I do a decent Sue Storm, but I'm not the best with. He wanted me to play Sue Storm because he was playing Reed Richards. I think I was playing as Cloak and Dagger at the time. And I'm more comfortable with Cloak and Dagger because I had a Moon Knight and a Spider-Man on the team, I believe. And these are characters that sometimes have a nasty habit of moving around quite often, specifically Spider-Man. And it's very difficult to heal these guys when they are moving around that often. So Cloak and Dagger has the homing attack that can then heal. So I decided to stay as Cloak and Dagger. And this guy, he told me, man, respectable. That's great. Don't worry about it. And as soon as I wasn't healing him, because I had to focus on our tanks and I had to focus on our damage dealer and our other support, which was a Rocket Raccoon. And Rocket Raccoon can do some really nice heals. So I had to heal Rocket Raccoon as well. He got really mad at me and left the game. And I did not understand, because I thought this guy was being really cordial. He was like, hey bro, can you play Sue Storm? And I said, nah man, not good with Sue Storm, and I think it would be better if I play with Cloak and Dagger. He said, respectable, let's go. And as soon as he doesn't get heals at the time that he wants heals, he decides he needs to leave the game. We won, by the way. We weren't losing or anything else like that. But it's just because his play was inconvenienced that he decided, yeah, no, I'm going to now leave. It's just crazy, man. Like, it's wild. But I want to give this guy the charitability. You guys can tell me what you think. Charitability I can afford this kind sir is that he disconnected by accident. The internet went out. Something happened, right? He had to drop off the game. His mom told him to go and wash the dishes. I don't know. But yeah, that will be it from me for now. I hope you enjoyed me rambling about basically nothing at all, just talking about these random people that may or may not exist in terms of, hey, I'm a pro player and I'm the best around, and oh, I'm a noob and I hope that the game caters to me and only me. We are the largest demographic, so they would obviously cater to us. You guys don't matter. Like, I've seen people and I've heard people say those things, but like I'm not referencing particular people. So if you don't think they exist, you don't think they exist, that's fair enough. I've been Mono, and this has been Mono, yapping, not playing. Tell me what you think. Leave a like on the video if you liked it. Subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Bye bye.